What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports. Athlon Sports released their all-conference teams a few days ago, and we're going to go through the Michigan players here, and I'll give you my take on it, and if I think some of these players are maybe overrated or underrated based off of Athlon. We start with the first team. Only one first-teamer for Michigan, Aiden Hutchinson, first-team all-defensive team for the Big Ten. He was on the defensive line. You look at the other defensive linemen for this first team. They had Zach Harrison of Ohio State, Haskell Garrett of Ohio State, George Karliftis of Purdue. Those were your four defensive linemen on that first team. So Aiden Hutchinson in good company. All four of those players are expected to be really good this year. So I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised with him being a first team player, but I'm a little bit surprised that Michigan only got one first team player. I mean, I know Michigan had a rough year last year, but we're talking about 22 spots plus the specialists. Count those. You could even say more than that, 26 players on the first team, and they only got one player. Again, I know Michigan was down last year, but they have talent, and you would expect them to have more than one first team all Big Ten player. And this, keep in mind, with Athlon, they're projecting ahead, so it has nothing to do with what these players have done in the past. This is how they're projecting it to be at the end of the year. So if you're telling me that Michigan's only going to have one first team all Big Ten player, I would say that would mean that Athlon thinks that Michigan's not going to have a great year this year. We haven't seen those predictions just yet, but it seems like they are not very high on Michigan based off of that. And even more surprising, if you go to the second team, they didn't have any on the second team. So first and second team, all Big Ten teams, Michigan had one player. That's not very good. Is it fair? Well, let's go to the third team now. They got Hassan Haskins at running back, Ronnie Bell wide receiver, Andrew Stuber at offensive line. So three on the offensive side of the ball. We had a defensive player as well. We'll get to him in just a second. But let's first start with Haskins at running back, third team all Big Ten. I think he's underrated a little bit here. We're talking about a guy that averaged 6.1 yards per carry on an offense that really wasn't very good last year. He only had 61 carries because they had other guys carrying the football, and it was a short season. So, you know, that's obviously a pretty small sample size. But 6.1 yards per carry, had 6 touchdowns. Probably their most consistent back last year. Of course, Charbonnet is gone. Probably the most talented running back last year. Only had 19 carries. Probably a big reason why he transferred. But anyways, Haskins there at second team, or third team, I should say. Probably should have been on the second team. When you look at the second team players, we'll start with the first team players. Tyler Goodson and Muhammad Ibrahim of Minnesota, Goodson of Iowa. Those are your two running backs on the first team. Yeah, I'd probably put those guys ahead of Haskins. But then when you go to the second team, it's Jalen Berger of Wisconsin, Master Teague of Ohio State, and Cam Porter of Northwestern. I think Haskins could definitely be in that conversation. You know, you look at Master Teague, he's probably going to be splitting the carries big time at Ohio State. At the end of the year, he might not even be the starter. They've got a lot of talent in the backfield. Cam Porter, Northwestern, Jalen Berger, Wisconsin. You know, I'd probably put Haskins ahead of those guys. So I think he probably should have been second team offense, but third team is not too bad. When you look at the other third teamers, you have Noah Cain of Penn State and Bo Melton of Rutgers. I'd tell you what, I'd probably put Noah Cain and Hassan Haskins on the second team. But that's what Athlon did. That's how they are projecting it. Also, Ronnie Bell there on the third team. At first, I was thinking, you know, he probably should have been, second team. You look at the second team players. They've got Freifogel of Indiana, David Bell of Purdue. Those are two really good wide receivers. So I can see Ronnie Bell on the third team. I don't really have a problem with that. First team wide receivers were Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Ohio State with a pair of first teamers at wide receiver. And then Stuber there on the offensive line. I think that's pretty solid, putting him there on the third team. And then we go to the defensive side of the ball. They did have a third team player on the defense. That's Dax Hill. Dax Hill, when I first saw this, I was like, wow, how is he not first team? We're talking about probably the best player on this Michigan team, a guy that I think is going to play on Sundays. I'm really high on him. I think he's going to have a big year this year. You go back to last season, again, I think he was their best player. He was second on the team in tackles, had an interception, broke up a lot of passes as well. So this is a guy that maybe at first you think, wow, he's being underrated big time. But then when you look at the safeties in the Big Ten this year, you start to think, well, maybe that's pretty fair, because there are some really good safeties in the Big Ten. The first team was Jaquan Brisker of Penn State, Brandon Joseph of Northwestern. You say, yeah, those guys should be ahead of Dax Hill. Then you go to the second team. You had Jack Corner of Iowa, Nick Cross of Maryland. I'd probably put Dax Hill on the second team ahead of one of those guys. But again, we're talking about some really talented players at safety in the Big Ten. And if they're projecting Michigan to just not do that well, although if you read their description, it says it has nothing to do with team success. This is simply based on the best players. So again, I think you move Haskins and Hill up to second team. That's where I would put them. But let's move on now to, they actually went a little bit further. They went to a fourth team this year. I don't think that's something they've done in the past, but yeah, they went to a fourth team, a fourth Big Ten team, and on that team you had Josh Ross at linebacker and Brad Robbins at punter. So Josh Ross at linebacker, fourth team, all Big Ten here. He was the leading tackler for Michigan last season, averaged 8.8 tackles per game. Had a sack in there, an interception in there, but he's probably going to be their top linebacker this season. With some guys gone, Cameron McGrone is gone, so look for Josh Ross to have a big impact for them. A guy that is really versatile at that linebacker spot. You look at some of the other linebackers, so let's just go ahead of him to the third team defense. We had Leo Chenal of Wisconsin, Jack Campbell of Iowa, Brandon Smith of Penn State. I guess I'm pretty good with this. I would say that those guys probably should be ahead of Josh Ross. So fourth team for him. I don't really know why they went that far, to a fourth team, but they did. But I think we had a couple of snubs here for Michigan. I think you have Jamon Green at cornerback and Brad Hawkins. These guys were not on even the fourth team all-conference. When we talked about the safeties, yeah, there are some really good safeties, but I don't know how you leave off Brad Hawkins. I think he could have a big year this year and really emerge. He was fourth on the team in tackles last year, averaged 8 tackles per game. Didn't really do a whole lot on the stat sheet, but it's just a talented guy. He only played 5 games. I don't see how you leave him off. I think he's the guy that will be at the end of the year. That's a pretty good combo there with Hill, with him and Hill there at safety. Pretty good combo there. You look at the third team defense, that was Dax Hill and Devin Matthews of Indiana. But then we go to the fourth team. These guys made it ahead of Hawkins. Deontay Williams of Nebraska and Christian Izine from Rutgers. So again, I would probably throw him on there, maybe on that fourth team at least. And then also Green at cornerback. I think he's the top cornerback coming back from Michigan this year. Should have a pretty solid season, but he doesn't even make it on there. You go to the fourth team. The fourth team, that was Trey Avery of Rutgers, Caesar Williams of Wisconsin, Corey Trice of Purdue, and Terheeb Still of Maryland. Those were your four-teamers. I think Green at least deserved to be on that fourth team. Michigan was not represented very well, though. When you look at this all-conference team from Athlon, they had 7 players. So 7 players from Michigan, and that's the same as Illinois. Michigan and Illinois both had 7 players. Indiana had 10. Iowa had 11. Ohio State had 13. Penn State had 10. Wisconsin had 11. So Michigan pretty far down that list. I think that Athlon's probably underrating Michigan a little bit based off of these selections. Now, what are they going to say about the actual team? We'll find out. It'll be very interesting. If you're wondering about the quarterbacks, no Cade McNamara, no J.J. McCarthy, I think that's fair. The 4-team offense was Graham Mertz of Wisconsin. I don't see a Michigan quarterback beating him out for that 4-team. Tanner Morgan of Minnesota was 3rd team. So, yeah, I don't think you're going to see a quarterback for Michigan on this list. But still, I think they underrated this team just a little bit. It's going to be interesting to see, again, what Athlon says about Michigan and where they project them to finish this upcoming season. I would love to know what you guys thought about this, where these players landed on the All-Big Ten team. Did you agree? Did you disagree? What would you change? Again, give me your thoughts down in the comments below.